are you, my holy sisters and brothers? That song is pretty well known. That's Candlelight by the Maccabees. Their original viral sensation on YouTube has got 15 million views. They're funny and catchy Hanukkah song. How are you? Let's light up the darkness. It's especially fun for us to watch that video because I think no less than 3 of the Maccabees have taught at our kids' school. All right, who's going to be with us as we're getting it going? On the 7th night of Hanukkah, we also just had Rosh Chodesh today. We went from Kislev to Teves. We're in the new month. This is such a time of miracles in our lives. Anything could happen. 7th night of Hanukkah. This one is all about Shabbos, right? The Berditchever Rebbe said that it's good that each day of Hanukkah has a special spiritual power, something unique that you can pray for on that day, where our prayers get a little extra oomph on their way up to heaven to be heard and perhaps answered by the Holy One of Blessing. And the 7th night of Hanukkah is all about Shabbos, right? We should pray that all of our Shabbosim, our Shabboses, all our Shabbats for the coming year should be filled with light and health and joy and beauty and abundance, right? Abundance. We should have abundance in our Shabbos, and the blessings of Shabbos, which is set up every week. Every week is set up by Shabbos, and the blessings of Shabbos should flow into the week that follows Shabbos. That's something to daven for, to pray for on the 7th night of Hanukkah. And then, tomorrow is the 8th night, the final night. That is called Zois Hanukkah. That's when we go beyond 7. 7 implies the natural world, because the world was created in 6 days, and God rested on the 7th day and sanctified the 7th day. 8 is about infinity. 8 is about supernatural, extra natural, beyond this world. All kinds of miracles can happen on the 8th night of Hanukkah. That is tomorrow. And I just posted about it a little bit earlier. There's going to be a record-breaking worldwide Zoom menorah. Try to get on that Zoom call. Maybe get early, because I think that they might only be, I don't know how it's going to work. But there's going to be thousands of people involved with that, and I think they're also going to live broadcast it. But check out the posting that's on the Accidental Talmudist page. Okay, who's with us tonight? We have a key DAF. This is a very important and very interesting page that we are going to be studying tonight. Who is with us? Sharon in Lebanon, New Jersey, Stephen in New Hampshire, Farah in Pakistan. Welcome, Farah. Always great to see you here. Pauline in Arkansas, Melissa in Great Neck, Matt in Eau Claire, Bill Eldridge says, I gotta admit to busting a gut at the music. Donna, always here. Great to see you, Donna, in Bahama, North Carolina. Brenna, that's my nephew singing, along with some other dudes. Awesome. And I know Brenna's in Massachusetts, right? Renee in Indy, Ann in Merced, Chaim in Charlotte, Helena in Finland. We are super international tonight. Great to have you with us. Hannah in Mississippi. I love your classes, says Hannah. It's great to have you here. James in Indianapolis. Sarah says hi. Lindsay in Cincinnati. Jeff received his mezuzah. That's great. Lindsay loves the song. Jeff is in Omaha. Lucy in Minnesota. Stephen is with us. Leah Kat also in Pakistan. Joyce in Amsterdam. This is fantastic. John in Sedona. Nancy in North Carolina. Andrew says Hag Sameach. By the way, the fellow who said he got his mezuzah, Nina will post that link again. A lot of people have taken advantage. If you're a Jew, it's not for non-Jews. It doesn't do anything for non-Jews. It would only be an adornment. But if you're a Jew, you can fulfill your obligation to have a mezuzah on your door. It has to be a handwritten scroll. They're often quite expensive. But we're working with an amazing organization, myzuzah.org. Nina will put it in the comments. And if you're a Jew and you don't already have a mezuzah on your home, they will send you a free one. Just use the code Talmudist to get your free mezuzah. Only do that if you don't already have a mezuzah. I think I have one here. Yeah, they're really beautiful. And what matters, remember, most people think that if they don't know that the mezuzah is the cover. The mezuzah is not the cover. The cover, it's nice to have a nice cover. It should protect the mezuzah. The mezuzah is the handwritten scroll written by a sofer on parchment that is inside with verses from the Torah, and it provides 24/7 protection for your home because you're fulfilling that Torah obligation to have a mezuzah on your home. Nancy with us from North Carolina. Andrew says Hag Sameach. Mark with us from Colorado. Nico in Oregon. Sharon says we need a very warm lesson on this snowy and cold night here. I know there's that massive storm on the East Coast. May everybody be healthy and well and safe and nobody, encounter danger or trouble from that storm. And we say amen. Rochelle with us from Modesto. Jeff is in Omaha. Julie is talking about overflowing with abundance. I love it. Bobo is in Alaska. Michelle in Washington. Elizabeth in Florida. It's a wonderful night. Everybody's doing great. Jeff says he has not received it. Okay, well, ask them. We don't send them out. Reach out to them, to that organization again. Marianella says happy Hanukkah. Sarah Metz. But we have received pictures. A lot of people have gotten them, like hundreds have. And actually, we just saw a t-shirt today from Sammy, who was wearing his AT lighted up for Hanukkah t-shirt and standing with his wife and their new mezuzah from My Zuzah. So that was very nice to see. Okay, where are we? And over there on the YouTube side, Sheila with us from Montana. Wonderful. All right, let's get into it. Tonight's class... Check this here. Tonight's class is dedicated, beautiful dedication, by George Jacoby in memory of Henry Jacoby, one of the founders of the first synagogue in Arkansas around 1850. And George says, may Henry Jacoby's memory always be for a blessing. Amen. We honor Henry Jacoby, who founded the first synagogue in Arkansas around 1850. What a beautiful memory. Thank you, George. If you'd like to dedicate an episode of AT Daily, great time to do it. We're in our annual campaign. You could do that at donate.accidentaltalmudist.org. Help us make our budget for the coming year so that we can keep sharing Torah with the world. When you donate to our nonprofit, every dollar has massive impact because you enable us to share this light, this ancient Jewish wisdom, this Torah, this understanding of God with the world. Okay, where are we? We are holding, this is Pesachim Chaf Hey. We're on page 25 of Tractate Pesachim, the fourth volume of the Talmud. We are in chapter 2, discussing the first Mishna of chapter 2. We're going to conclude our discussion of the prohibition on milk and meat, not only eating it, but benefiting from it. And then we're going to move into a fascinating discussion that's cued off of this discussion of what we're allowed to benefit from or not. And we're going to be talking about the limits of benefit when it comes to saving a life. We've always heard saving a life is the ultimate thing. You do anything to save a life. There's actually 3 limitations. There's 3 things that you cannot do to save a life. And we're going to be coming to that in just a little while. All right, to finish the discussion we were in, yesterday we were examining the prohibition on milk and meat together. So the Torah does not say you can't eat a cheeseburger. The Torah says you shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk. This was some kind of a delicacy in the ancient world. We heard yesterday that it was even considered a food with healing property. I don't know if that's true, but somebody said that in the comments. But the Jews were not allowed to cook an animal in its mother's milk, and that's extended to mean you cannot cook meat in milk. Milk represents life. Meat is, it's an animal that's been killed. So this mixture of life and death together is prohibited. Now, what's prohibited in the Torah specifically is cooking it. You can't cook meat and milk. How do we know that you can't eat meat mixed with milk? The sages derive that from the fact that when it says you shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk, it says you are holy. You are a holy people. You shall be holy. You are a holy people. You will not cook a kid in its mother's milk. Elsewhere it says you are a holy people. You shall not eat flesh torn from an animal in the field. Meaning you won't eat a limb torn from a living animal, but specifically in this case, you won't eat from a treifa. So a treifa is an animal that's gonna die. It has some kind of a damage such that it will not live for another 12 months. So it's, in a sense, it's like The Walking Dead. That animal is gonna die. So you might think you could eat that, but you can't eat that, right? You can't eat a treifa. Even if it's slaughtered properly, you can't eat a treifa. Why? Because the Torah says you are a holy people. You are not going to eat this animal that has already been damaged in some way, and it's on its way to dying. And because it's on its way to dying already, the fact that you slaughter it in a proper kosher way you didn't slaughter it really, because it's already kind of dying, right? It's already walking dead. Bottom line, the Torah says you may not eat the treifa because you're a holy people, and you may not cook a kid in its mother's milk because you are a holy people. And that link, you are a holy people, the sages learn out that we cannot eat meat with milk. That's how we establish that law. Then we asked yesterday, how do we know it's prohibited to benefit from milk and meat? Okay, I can't eat it, but if I cook a cheeseburger, can I sell it to somebody who is allowed to eat it? Non-Jews can eat cheeseburgers. There's nothing wrong with a non-Jew eating a cheeseburger. The Torah doesn't speak on that. That's not one of the Noahide laws. They're perfectly permitted to eat, and they should enjoy it and relish it and eat it with gusto. So can I cook it for them and sell it to them? No, I cannot. I am prohibited to even benefit, because I'm a Jew, from a mixture of milk and meat. How do we know that? Where do we derive that from? And so we tried a few different theories. The sages tried a few different theories in yesterday's discussion. We tried learning it out from orla, which is fruit harvested from a tree in its first 3 years, which is prohibited both to eat and to benefit from. But we can't learn a law about milk and meat from the law on orla, on fruit in the first 3 years of a tree, because the orla was never fit for consumption. There was no time at which this fruit, whether it was on the tree in its first 3 years, or when you took it off the tree, it was never permitted to eat that. The milk and meat, before they were mixed together, yes, we could eat that. If it was kosher milk and it was kosher meat, we could certainly eat that. So how can we learn this stringency that it's prohibited for benefit from the law of orla, which in itself is more stringent because it never had a time that it was fit for eating? So then we tried chametz. Chametz, leaven on Passover, leavened bread, leavened products. We're not allowed to eat them on Passover. We're not allowed to benefit from them on Passover. So can we learn out this prohibition on eating gets extended to benefit from the law of chametz for the law of milk and meat? No, we cannot, because chametz carries its own stringency that if you violate that law, the Torah says that soul shall be cut off from its people. Meaning that the Torah is saying you'll be punished with kares, which is sometimes translated as excision, but the idea is that your life will be shortened, right? You'll experience death at the hands of the heavenly court. We won't know exactly when that happens or exactly how much time you lost from what your life would have been otherwise, but the point is that heaven looks very stringently on somebody who eats leaven during Passover. And that is not the case with milk and meat. There's no mention of kares or a soul being cut off from the people. So chametz is more stringent than milk and meat. We can't learn out that prohibited to eat means prohibited to benefit from chametz. So then we tried kilayim. Kilayim is the prohibition on planting diverse kinds together, planting diverse seeds together. In other words, you can't plant a pomegranate tree in the midst of your grape vineyard. You can't, it's a Jewish thing. Different kinds of plants have to have their own area, and they need to be separated from another crop by a certain minimum distance. And if you do plant diverse kinds together in the same plot, then it is prohibited. And the Torah says about kilayim, about mixture of diverse kinds, prohibited, period. Doesn't say prohibited for eating, just says prohibited. And therefore, we learned out that that means prohibited both for eating and benefit. Now, we said, well, so since that's prohibited for eating and for benefit, maybe we can learn that milk and meat also prohibited for both eating and for benefit. But then the sages object, no, wait a minute, kilayim is an absolute liability offense, even if you eat those fruits in an unusual manner, like with respect to orla, for example, fruit taken from the first 3 years of the tree. If you eat that fruit, you're going to receive lashes. But if you just eat the juice of one of those fruits, as long as it's not oil or oil from olives or wine from grapes, but if it's some other fruit, blueberries or mulberries or pomegranates, if you eat the fruit, you get lashes because that's a specific negative prohibition in the Torah. But if you just squeeze the juice out, that's like eating those things in an unusual manner, so you wouldn't be subject to lashes. Now with kilayim, whether you eat it in the usual manner or the unusual manner, you still get the lashes. Is that the case with milk and meat? So the first answer from the Gemara is, no, that's not the case with milk and meat. If you eat it in an unusual manner, then you wouldn't be subject to the lashes. But then the Gemara answers its own objection and says, wait a minute. With respect to the product of diverse kinds of plants or seeds planted together, the Torah never said you shall not eat. It just said it is prohibited. And from that, we learn that it's absolutely prohibited to eat or have benefit. Well, with respect to milk and meat, it didn't say you shall not eat. It just says prohibited. So maybe we should be learning also from the case of kilayim that like it, if you eat milk and meat in the usual way or in an unusual way, you still are going to be subject to the same liability for lashes, flogging, because you violated a specific negative commandment. If you're just tuning in for the first time, there's no rabbinic court in the world that right now is administering lashes. And even in ancient times, when they could do that, lashes would only be administered in very specific circumstances. If you were warned right before you did it that you would receive lashes if you do it, and there were 2 witnesses, and then it happened with a very short space of time, etc. But this is more like what does the law say? The sages are much more interested in exactly the theory of law that's being applied here. So it would seem that milk and meat is a good analogy. There's a good analogy between the prohibition on milk and meat and the prohibition on the product of diverse plants grown together in the same plot of land. Both prohibited for eating, prohibited for benefit, and even if you eat them in an unusual manner, you're still subject to that liability for lashes in both cases. But then the Gemara says, well, one might object that milk and meat were once fit for eating before they were mixed together, and these plants or fruits that were grown in a plot of land mixed together with diverse kinds, they were never fit for eating. You could never eat that, even when it was on the vine. When you took it off the vine, it was never permitted for eating. It had no time where it was fit to be eaten. And the Gemara answers its own objection. Actually, that's not true. The seeds that went into the ground, they could have been eaten before they went into the ground. In fact, they could be eaten even after they go in the ground, but not. They may be eaten until they take root, right? So until those seeds actually germinate and take root in the ground, they would be permitted. And likewise, if you took a plant that was in a perforated pot, meaning that the root could extend out of the pot, so you took a whole plant and then you put it, in the vineyard. You took a little lemon tree, let's say, and you put it in a grape vineyard. The moment you set it down, it is not prohibited. It is still permitted to you because you have not planted diverse kinds. In that ruling in the law, the way it's stated in the Torah, it says that the seed is prohibited and the fullness is prohibited. So the seed When it germinates, then it becomes prohibited. And if you take this plant in a perforated pot, you set it down in this plot of land, with in the vineyard, and it's a lemon tree, so the root can come out. If it's perforated, that's already considered like the root. Once it has the potential to extend down, it's like as if it extended down. However, the plant itself is permitted. It only what becomes unpermitted is when it starts to grow, right? And when it grows more than 1/200th, because to nullify kilayim, if you have just a huge tree and only like one new leaf comes in, that's actually nullified by the big lemon tree. It's when the new growth exceeds 1/200th, because it's 200, one part in 200 is nullified by the greater whole. But once you have, let's say, 2 parts in 200, then that little new growth is not nullified, and then it becomes prohibited. But the point is, until there's that new growth, it is permitted, right? So it had a time of fitness, like the milk and meat had a time of fitness before they were mixed. The seeds or the new growth had a time of fitness before the seed germinated or the new growth went bigger than 1 part in 200 of the plant that it came along with. And so therefore, yes, we learn out that milk and meat mixture, you can't eat it, and it is prohibited to benefit from it. And even if you eat it in an unusual manner, you'd still be liable to the punishment for lashes if you were warned properly before you did it. Okay, that concludes the discussion of milk and meat. Now, while we've been talking about the prohibition on various substances, not just to eat them, but to benefit from them, the prohibition on benefit of prohibited substances, we now go to a very, very interesting law. Now, this is introduced, Ravin, let me get that in front of me. Hold on a second. I just want to make sure I'm starting in the right place. Okay, so speaking of benefit, one may heal oneself. So the Gemara says, we can heal ourselves with any prohibited substance except, right? So now it's going to tell us the exception. So let's say that milk and meat, we just said, right? It's prohibited to cook milk and meat in milk, and it's prohibited to eat meat mixed with milk, and it's prohibited to benefit from meat mixed with milk. But if for some reason milk and meat was medicine for you, right? And you were like actually so ill that you were in danger, and the only thing that would save you from that life and death danger is to eat the cheeseburger, then you eat the cheeseburger. And in fact, if it's to save a life, if it's to heal from a dangerous illness, any substance that is otherwise prohibited for benefit is permitted for healing. Any substance is that's prohibited for benefit is permitted for healing, particularly to save a life. Healing when one is in danger. What is the exception? The wood of an Asherah. An Asherah was a tree that was used for idolatry, right? So this was actually a big problem in that Canaanite region, around ancient Israel, and tragically even within ancient Israel, there were people who worshipped the Asherah. The Asherah was a feminine, idolatrous god represented by certain trees. So if you knew that a particular tree and the wood that came from that tree had been worshipped in idolatrous practices, then you cannot benefit from that. You cannot benefit from that. So the Gemara immediately says, well, whoa. Wait a minute. If we're talking about danger, then you can use anything. And if we're talking about the person is not in danger, well, then nothing which is prohibited for benefit is going to be permitted to them. And the Gemara answers, we are talking about danger, and we agree that any substance prohibited for benefit is permitted for healing and to save a life, but not the wood of a tree used for idolatrous practices. No. And idolatry is such a major sin, such a major transgression, that if people, bow down and call that tree a god, then we cannot use any substance for that tree, even for healing. Even for healing. Hold on a second. Now, how do we know that? How do we know that something that comes from idolatry, is like a bridge too far? Like idolatry is such an intense sin that we can't even save a life for it. We always learn, for example, you totally violate Shabbos. You desecrate Shabbos, one of the 10 Commandments. But you desecrate Shabbos to save a life. So why is it that we can't use wood from a tree that was worshipped by, some ignorant idolater, even to save a life? Because there are certain things that one sacrifices his life for, namely a Kiddush Hashem, to sanctify the name of God. When does that come up? Okay. Rabbi Yaakov said... and let's just get back into it. Okay, so Rabbi Yaakov said that Rabbi Yochanan said, with regard to objects for which it is prohibited to derive benefit, one may heal oneself with any substance except wood from a tree designated for idolatry, the Asherah. Then the Gemara asks, well, wait a minute, are we talking about danger or not danger? In danger, really? You still can't use it when there's danger? And the Gemara answers, yes. It is referring to a case where there is danger, and even so, one may not derive benefit from the wood of an Asherah tree. As it was taught in a Baraisa that Rabbi Eliezer says, if it is stated, why is it stated? Now, we say this every day, at least twice a day, right? And you shall love the Lord. We say the Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Blessed be his name forever and for everywhere. And then we say, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. Might is an interesting translation. What it says is you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart. It says that. And with all your soul. It says that. And then it says, uvechol meodecha. Bechol meodecha. Right? So meodecha is usually translated as and all your might. Sometimes translated as, and all your resources. But when we say, for example, thank you very much, we say, that something is very good, we say tov meod. Meod is like very. That's what it really means. It's a word, it's an adjective that means very. So if something is good, it's tov. If it's very good, it's tov meod. And this is, you shall love the Lord your God with all meodecha. The echa ending is your, right? So it's with all your veriness. Right? So what does that mean? You can see why it's translated as all your might or all your resources. And as we'll see, what it means is all of your property, all of your possessions. Everything that you've amassed in this world, you need to dedicate toward your love of God. The commandment is you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your veriness, with all your property. Now, Rabbi Eliezer asks, okay, with all your heart means you got to get really emotional about it and get into it. But with regard to with all your soul and with all your might, isn't that superfluous? Once you love with all your soul, doesn't that include everything about you? What is the difference between all your soul and all your might? Says Rabbi Eliezer, this commandment comes because there are different kinds of people in the world. Some people value their own life more than their possessions, more than their property. You would think most people do, but if you actually look at the way people behave in this world, some people actually value their property more than their life. They just don't think about that they're risking their life. Their property is right in front of them, and to preserve their property, they risk their life, right? So they love their property more than their life. You might say that a more sane person loves, is in love with his life more than with his property. At any rate, for the person who loves his his life more than his property. The commandment is, you shall love the Lord your God with all your soul. Meaning, even if he takes your soul. That's how Rabbi Akiva explains it. And what does that mean? That if you are called, that God forbid, really God forbid, if someday somebody says to you, bow to the idol or I'm going to kill you, and you're a Jew, you're supposed to say, then kill me. I'm not going to bow to some idol. I'm not going to worship some other God. Some say, elsewhere in the Talmud this is discussed, some say it is permitted to martyr yourself. Some say it is commanded to martyr yourself. Rabbi Eliezer here is saying it's commanded, right? You do not bow down to an idol if you're a Jew. That would be a chilul Hashem, a desecration of the name. If you refuse to engage in idolatry and your life gets taken from you, that's called a kiddush Hashem. That's a sanctification of God's name. And when people are martyred in this world, that's what it means. Somebody said to them, I'll kill you unless you worship this God. And so you accept death rather than commit idolatry. That commandment comes from here. But says Rabbi Eliezer, for some people, since their property is worth more to them than their life, they should know that they should be willing to give up all their property rather than bow down to some idol. Some people might have more trouble giving up all their property than giving up their life. But for those people, the third part of the phrase comes, right? With all your might, with all your veriness. Okay. All right. So then, here we go. So then Ravin came from Eretz Yisrael to Babylonia, and he said that Rabbi Yochanan said that there are three things that we have to that we do not do them even to save a life, right? So right now we've already said even to save my own life, I don't engage in idolatry. There's two other things that we don't do even to save your life. The second one is bloodshed. In other words, if somebody says, Tom, kill John, and if you don't kill John, I'm going to kill you, then you have to be willing to die yourself. You can't commit murder to save your own life. And the other one is basically rape, prohibited, forbidden sexual relations. So if somebody says, rape that woman, rape that unmarried woman or whatever, just rape some woman, have sex with some woman who's not your wife, or I'm going to kill you, you have to be willing to die for murder, for rape, or for idolatry, even to save your life. You don't do it. So how do we know? And the question is, how do we know that? Right? We just learned from Rabbi Eliezer and for this discussion that we just had that you can't save your life by committing idolatry. You can't save yourself from some sickness. If to do it, you have to benefit from the product of idolatry. How do we know that same prohibition extends to rape and murder? How do we know? Okay, so that one may not heal oneself with idolatry, even when his life is in danger. We learn that from that which you just said. From where is this law derived with regard to forbidden sexual relations and murder? As it was taught in the Baraisa that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says. So this is from Rebbe. Rebbe said, the verse says about one who rapes a betrothed woman, but you shall, so this is a verse in the Torah. This is at Deuteronomy 22:26. It says, but you shall do nothing to the young woman. The young woman has committed no sin worthy of death. For as when a man rises against his neighbor and slays him, so too with this matter. Asks Rebbe, what does a murderer have to do with a betrothed young woman who was raped? Right? We're talking about you can't rape this woman. What does that have to do with a murderer? Why is the Torah comparing the rape to the murder? Rather, the mention of murder comes in order to teach a law, a halacha, about the betrothed young woman, and it turns out that, in addition, it derives a halacha from that case. The Torah juxtaposes a murderer to a betrothed young woman to indicate that just as in the case of a betrothed young woman, one may save her by taking the rapist's life, right? So you can kill the rapist. You can, it's like self-defense extended to another person. If somebody's trying to rape you, you could certainly kill them. And if he's trying to rape someone else, you can kill the rapist. Yes, you can. And so too, one may save a potential murder victim by taking the pursuer's life. Again, you can save your own life if a murderer is coming to try and kill you, and you can save somebody else's life if a murderer is coming to try and kill them. Conversely, it is possible to learn about the case of the young betrothed woman from the case of a murderer. Just as with regard to a potential murderer, the law is that if one is being forced to murder someone else, he should allow himself to be killed and not transgress that prohibition. So too, with regard to a betrothed young woman, the law is that she should allow herself to be killed and not transgress the prohibition of forbidden relations. For a man too, right? So if somebody says, have forbidden sexual relation or I will kill you, you have to allow yourself to be killed. You don't do that. You don't violate the prohibition on prohibited sexual relations in order to save your life, just like you don't violate the law against murder in order to save your own life. Now, we just learned that rape is compared to murder in the sense that just as you can't kill someone else in order to save your own life, likewise, you can't rape in order to save your own life. But how do we know that you can't kill in order to save your own life? Where is that law derived from? Once you have that law, okay, you can extend it to the case of rape because there's this connection in the Torah that connects, that one coming upon this betrothed woman having sex with her to the murderer who rises up and kills someone else. That connection is there. But how do we know that it is prohibited to save your life by killing someone else? The Gemara asks, and from where do we derive this law with regard to murder itself? Now, this is fascinating. It is not stated in the Torah, and it is not hinted at in the Torah. The sages arrive at that law through a logical deduction. Listen, it is based on logical reasoning that one life is not preferable to another. The Gemara relates an incident to demonstrate this. This is similar to a certain man who came before Rava and said to him, a local official said to me. So you can imagine living under the Nazis. This is the sort of thing that came up all the time. The Nazis were so cruel. The Romans were so cruel. The Greeks were cruel. There were so many times when, the Jews were living in a place and were being persecuted by some greater power. And the representatives of that power, were kind of like officers in uniform who could be incredibly cruel. So a person encountered such a cruelty. And so this Jew, came before Rava and the sage Rava and said to him, a local official said to me, go kill so-and-so, and if not, I will kill you. Rava said to him, it is preferable that he should kill you and you should not kill. Why? What did you think? That your blood is redder than his? Meaning, did you think that your blood is more valuable than his? We cannot compare the value of one human life to another. It's more dear to you, for sure. The guy standing before Rava, his life is more dear to him than that other person's life is. But to the whole rest of the world, you can't say, that your blood is redder than his. You can't say that your life is more valuable than his. So if this officer has said to you, go kill so-and-so or I'm going to kill you, you have to accept being killed. What did you think? That your blood is redder and more precious than his? Perhaps that man's blood is redder than yours. Apparently, one may not save his own life by taking someone else's. And that's such an important principle. So, it's like, I'm almost done. So if you have comments or questions, and probably some people will, put them in now. So I'm just going to add one little coda. So the Gemara relates that Mar bar Rav Ashi found Ravina, so the son of Rav Ashi, who was sort of Ravina's partner in editing the Talmud, came before Rava, found Rava, rubbing his daughter with unripe olives of Orla for medicinal purposes, right? So the daughter needed some kind of healing, which rubbing olives on her skin could provide. The olives, the only olives that were around were taken from Orla, from a tree that was not yet 3 years old, that was not yet 4 years old. It was in its first 3 years of life, so that fruit is prohibited, as we learn, prohibited for eating, prohibited for benefit. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, is it danger? That would be the first question, right? So Mar bar Rav Ashi said to him, say that the sages said that one may derive benefit from such a prohibited item at a time of danger. However, who says that one is permitted to do so when it is not a time of danger, right? So maybe he was thinking, well, he's just kind of rubbing it on her skin because, her skin is dry. That's not danger, so you can't use that prohibited item unless there's danger. Ravina said to him, a high fever is also deemed a time of danger. The girl was not just having dry skin, she had a fever. And rubbing her skin in this way under the medical practices of that time was understood to heal her from this dangerous fever. Where am I? And some say that Ravina said, a high fever is also deemed a time of danger, and one may derive benefit from a prohibited item in such a situation. Some say that Ravina said to him as follows, am I deriving benefit in a usual manner? The usual way to derive benefit from these olives is to use them after they have become ripe so that their oil can be drawn out. Since Ravina was not deriving benefit in the usual manner, he was permitted to do so. So there was a permit to use the olives from the prohibited Orla, from this tree in its first 3 years. Either it was possible because the girl was in danger, and therefore you could use this prohibited substance, or it was possible because it was being used in an unusual manner. And we learned that the fruit of kilayim, the produce of kilayim, diverse kinds mixed together, so that you can't use even in an unusual manner. But the product of Orla, you can't use it if it's used in the usual manner, but if it's an unusual manner, probably still prohibited, but not going to be liability for lashes at least. I suspect that what was going on here is more that the daughter was ill and ill enough that her father considered it a dangerous situation and therefore was permitted to use these olives from the tree that was not yet mature under Jewish law. All right, that's what we've got today. Let us see if there are some questions. Bill, as an anarchist, I'd give a good deal of a fortune if I had one to live somewhere where the courts had such a reticence to deal out violent punishment as the courts of the sages, right? So commenting on the fact that the sages would not impose a punishment, particularly a capital punishment, unless the person who was guilty of the offense had been warned that the thing he was about to do was prohibited by the Torah, that the punishment for doing it is some kind of corporal or capital punishment, and then he went and did it anyway within a short amount of time from receiving the warning, and there were 2 witnesses who saw it. Otherwise, not possible. John, sure. With rabbinic okays, we have placed many pig heart valves into observant Jews to save their lives. That's fascinating, right? So John is a doctor in Arizona, and he's telling us that with rabbinic approval, they harvest heart valves from a pig, right? So the flesh of a pig is prohibited to a Jew, not just to eat, but for benefit. But now that we're talking about danger and saving lives, so then the pig heart valve becomes possible for the Jew to use. Thank you, John, for that. Sharon, is there not a problem for a patient with severe burns to receive a skin graft using pig skin? I remember when I worked with burn patients, this presented a moral challenge to some. I have to research the issue more, but John is telling us that they got the heter, they got the permission from Orthodox rabbis to use it to save a life. So I would think that the pig skin graft would fall under the same rubric. I'm not a rabbi and I haven't researched this issue, so I am not commenting on it, but it sounds correct, and certainly it's a question that can be Googled, and there'll be I know there are many and long articles on this subject. Hannah, are hybrid foods prohibited? They're a product of more than one fruit or vegetable. That's so interesting. Like are you talking about like a loquat or a pluot, right? These plants that are crossbred and produce a new kind of tree. I don't know about that. What we can't do is grow two trees, two kinds of crops, two kinds of plants in the same plot, right? We grow them apart. Just like we don't plow with like a horse and a cow together, right? We actually don't do that. That's another one of those chukim, laws in the Torah that they don't make sense. We just do it because God said so. We don't know why He said so, but God said so. So we don't grow diverse kinds together. Creating a hybrid, I don't know. I don't know if that's a problem or not. That's a really interesting question. Really interesting. Yosef, what about saving another's life? Is killing justified? As the 10 words, as I understand it, say not murder as opposed to kill. Yeah, so we mentioned that earlier, right? So you must have asked that before I answered. You absolutely, to save someone else's life, can kill the murderer, right? The one who comes to murder, absolutely. You can defend yourself and you can defend another. I mean, 100%. 100%. To save a life, you can kill. What you can't do is to save your own life, commit murder, right? That's what we learned today. Why should you think? And now, what's interesting about that is, who was it that said so? It was Rava, right? So Rava said, "What makes you think that your blood is redder than his?" I just remember in college and philosophy classes, a question might be asked, well, what if one person is a heart surgeon who saves lives on a daily basis, and the other person is a criminal, right? And, so if the choice that was given to me was, well, kill the criminal, or we're going to kill the heart surgeon, or maybe you are a heart surgeon, right? Go kill that criminal, or we're going to kill you. And you might think, well, the heart surgeon, saves lives every day, and the criminal, what is he adding to society? But there is no distinction made like that. Rava didn't say to the man who came before him, and what is your profession, and what is the profession of the this poor victim that the oppressive official came and said, you murder him or we're going to murder you. Rava didn't ask, what's your profession and what was the other person's profession? It's not relevant. You never know what's going to happen in the future. Maybe that criminal will make an atonement and end up, saving many lives one day. So we make no comparison like that, right? So we learned today that even to save your own life, you may not murder, you may not rape, and you may not desecrate God's name by committing idolatry. That is what we learned today. This is an important lesson, a little bit dark, but important that we learned it together. So shkoyach to you. Shkoyach is this kind of quick way of saying yasher koach. May you be strengthened to study more Torah every day in your life, like the Torah that you studied today, right? So that you should keep learning. You should keep learning important lessons. These three cases, we might think, well, how often is that going to come up? But what we're really learning, important at that theological, philosophical level, right, is that no person's blood is redder than anybody else's, right? We are all equal in the eyes of God, and we have to conduct ourselves appropriately. You should be blessed to keep learning. You should have a beautiful Hanukkah. This is the seventh night, a time to daven, to pray for great Shabbats all year, and that the blessings of Shabbat should extend into the week. And you should have a great, great night. All the best.